All right, so last week I left off with a few opening and introductory paragraphs to that chapter, We Agnostics. The one chapter that was just guaranteed to always just really rub me the wrong way when I'd have to hear it read in meetings. I think, well, actually, in retrospect, almost all of this stuff is highly annoying when you can see through the deception and when you can see through, the kind of agenda these people push. In a very subtle way upon newcomers, and then later on, by the time you realize what you're involved in, you're either too brainwashed or you're too afraid of drinking again to try to get away from it. And I think that's one of the most dishonest aspects of AA. There's not even the most fundamentalist of religions, I guess you could say, try to deceive people from the get-go like AA does. In newcomers meetings, oftentimes they try to make it out like, we're just this big friendly neighborhood self-help group that everybody has a drinking problem in when they get here, and we all solve it, through this common little simple program, and, and it works great, and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, most of you, even your most hardcore religions, I guess you could call it, if you ask them on the front end what they're about and what they believe in and what they preach and all the other kind of, what their dogma is, basically, what their core values are, I guess is what you could define it as. They would tell you right up front what it's about or what they think. AA kind of practices a method of deceptive recruiting to newcomers, which to me is another good indicator that it's a religious cult. I think I've even touched upon this before, but I mean, I just noticed how they subtly do this. Like in this chapter, We Agnostics, they start out by acting like, this is not a religion. This is a program that's open to everybody. But then you can see in this chapter right here, it's very plain that this is absolutely a religion. It's an AA religion. The deity is this God who punishes you with drunkenness if you don't do his will and obey his steps and etc. But I don't really have to put forth opinions on that. All I got to do is use their own words against them. In fact, that was one of the things I said that I had in mind when I started this video thing. I think it's been over a year now, a year and a half maybe even. Was I wasn't going to have to actually come forth with any kind of conjectures in order to attack these people, that their own literature and their own statements speak for themselves. So I'll just dive right back into the chapter again where I left off, which said that means we've written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral, and it means, of course, that we're going to talk about God. And then it jumps right in to saying here difficulty arises with agnostics. Well, yeah, I think that would be a strong indicator if a guy goes to an organization that advertises itself as a way to quit drinking, as a successful way to quit drinking, and then immediately they start preaching at him about God. I mean, I think that naturally, yes, some difficulty would arise there. So it says, many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God, for we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. That's making, again, a lot of presumptions there. Neatly evaded or entirely ignored. Now, probably, in almost every case, the guy's face falls because he says, I came here to try to get help with a drinking problem, and now you're going to preach religion to me. It's not that he feels he evaded or ignored it. He's probably already heard all that shit at some point or the other, even in a religion like my household religion of the Catholic Church, which is filled with people who drink and get drunk and far, far worse things if you've been watching the news lately. I mean, but not to get on that subject, but, even in a religion like that, I remember many times, panic when things started going haywire with me. It was suggested I needed to talk to a priest, or it was suggested I needed to attend mass, or I needed to pray, or I needed to do this or that when it come to, maybe my problem was that, I had drifted away, from religion and all that. And I knew that wasn't my problem. I think that what he's describing here is actually a very normal thing. I think if you've ever been caught in a cycle of addiction, severely caught in a cycle of addiction, I think that you probably already had either some kind of religious solution shoved in your direction at one point or the other. Well, maybe not so much in today's world, because today's world is a little bit more, I guess you could say, secular oriented than it was back then, or that it is in the, the heavily tight knit communities where the churches are the kind of the backbone of everything. But I think, in today's world, everybody just, shoves you into treatment and 12-step religion. So, but I think you've already probably heard some kind of pseudo-religious, pseudo-spiritual crap at one point or the other before you got, severely addicted to whatever your substance was. And I think that everybody who has been addicted at one point or the other, I know that when my drinking problem spiraled out of control, I knew it didn't have nothing to do with something spiritual. I knew it had to do with a lot of stressful things going on in my life that I didn't really know how to deal with or cope with, and I just kept turning to the bottle more and more. At one time, the bottle was a way to have fun, a way to relax, and then, eventually it became something that I was dependent on. It became a solution. But I knew it wasn't something to do with spirituality. So, yeah, naturally, when you get to AA after you've gone through a lot of problems in regards to drinking or drug abuse or whatever it is, and they start talking spiritual matters at you, of course your face is going to fall. It's not because you evaded the religious problem. It's not because, especially when they're talking about, him, in big capital letters and all of that other stuff. It's like, oh my God, I came here looking for help, and now I'm going to get another religion rammed down my throat, So then they presume to say this: we know how he feels. We've shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Maybe it's not doubt and prejudice, and maybe you don't fucking know how he feels. Maybe the guy's not having doubt and prejudice because he was a heavy drinker. I mean, I can tell you this: growing up in a neighborhood that was largely Italian Irish Catholics, there was a lot of heavy freaking drinkers, and a lot of them were on mass at Sunday mornings. So I don't necessarily think that they were prejudiced against religion. I think that, addiction and religion is two wholly independent issues. It doesn't have anything to do with each other. I mean, maybe you have people, I'm sure, that have, that give testimonies about how their religion or how Jesus saved their lives out there when they, had their drug problem. And I'm not necessarily saying that in a belittling way, but to even though it kind of sounded like it there, because I'm not a big fan of religion, but not an atheist either. But I think that, to say how a guy feels if you start preaching religion to him and you're saying that you shared his prejudice, it may not be prejudice at all. It may be the fact that he doesn't necessarily, if he's a religious person, he may feel like he doesn't, or she, by the way, doesn't feel like that they need you to talk to them about religion and God and all of that. Maybe they think they've already got some understanding on the subject and don't need some weird stranger preaching shit to them. Or maybe there's someone who doesn't believe for whatever reasons, and it's personal reasons. It has nothing to do with prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. You're going for the dramatics again, the dramatic flair about everything. I didn't know many people who had drinking problems when I was hanging out in bars and when I was, on the Skid Rows and places like that. I didn't know anybody that was just violently anti-religious. I don't think most people I don't think I ever really thought about it when I was a heavy boozer. I think all I thought about was, I can't wait to get to my bottle. I mean, I can't wait to get to the liquor store. I don't think I was ever dedicated to being violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress during childhood. Okay, I guess. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. Maybe some of us rejected that particular conception because it didn't fit in with our own ideas, values, or our own ideas about life in general. Maybe we didn't like the idea of what had been told to us our whole lives, and maybe when we got educated, or maybe when we got a little bit more mature, or maybe when we just asked honest questions of ourselves at various points in our lives, maybe we came to the conclusion that what we had taught is not the place that we wanted to be. it's not like I just one day woke up and said, okay, I can't stop drinking. Now I hate religion. I mean, I gradually drifted away from Christianity and it would be a long, boring, drawn-out story. It wouldn't mean a whole lot to explain it all word for word and in depth. I mean, I could go on about it, but I don't think it would really mean much, except to me. And a lot of it's rather mundane. I mean, it's not like it's some dramatic story involved in all of that. But I mean, to say, they're making a lot of presumptions here again. We rejected a conception because it seemed inadequate. No, maybe it seemed erroneous. Maybe it seemed like it did. Maybe it seemed illogical. Maybe this, maybe that. I mean, you're just making blanket sweeping statements as though they're absolute truths. I don't know how I ever sat in meetings and listened to this. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. I don't think we ever. What's this we shit he's talking about all the time? He's always grouping everybody into this category of we did this and we did that, as though somehow or the other he's got this power to assume and speak for everyone on behalf of everyone everywhere all of the time. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered. Okay, we were bothered. Wait a minute, I skipped something. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was weak and even cowardly. Well, nobody I know of, especially people who are drinking heavily or people who are addicted, are really going around thinking about these types of things. I mean, what he's describing here is maybe a small contingent of people that maybe were angry towards religion. I mean, I was angry towards religion for a long time. Not in the way he's describing. He's describing like, you had a bad experience with religion, therefore you just went violently anti-religious and turned into a drunk. I mean, this is really faulty reasoning here. I was angry at it for a very long time because I felt that it stole key components of my childhood. It messed with my mind in ways that, it took me a long time to get over with. I mean, it was way into adulthood before I discovered what I would call my own faith, I guess, or spirituality or religion. I mean, I don't really classify paganism, my own personal type, as a religion, but, again, that's another subject. But that, too, is a part of a process. It's not like, you just wake up one morning and you're violently anti-religious and angry and declaring everybody who's a believer is weak because you're drunk. I mean, he's creating a stereotype here. And he's going after the stereotype as though that somehow invalidates everyone. It's called a straw man argument. I've talked about that before. Nobody to my knowledge has ever taken this position when they had a heavy drinking problem. I mean, nobody that I knew of that had a severe drug problem was taking this position. And even if they did take this position, it doesn't prove anything. I mean, it proves absolutely nothing at all. I could say some people leave the United States military disillusioned because they were disappointed in something that happened when they were in there. Okay, I could say that, but that doesn't prove anything. It doesn't mean anything. I'm just making a generalized statement that has absolutely nothing to do with nothing. I mean, it's hard for me to grasp the fact that this whole book is just full of this shit. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and an inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. Well, I would actually think that's a healthy reaction. I think it's a healthy reaction to look at the world around you and some of the most insane things that go on in it and say, Jesus, what the fuck is going, there's something really terribly wrong with this picture here, but I don't think that necessarily correlates, okay, to violently anti-religious either. I was reading something in an article online about Alyssa Bustamante, who was a teenager that decided she wanted to feel like what it was like to murder somebody. She stabbed like a 9-year-old neighbor to death, and then wrote in her diary, that it felt kind of good to kill somebody. I mean, that didn't in of itself, reading about that, suddenly make me violently anti-religious about my own beliefs or whatever. I mean, but there was this feeling, when you read something like that or hear about something like that, of saying, Jesus Christ, this world of ours is really pretty fucked up. I don't think, as far as having deep skepticism, yeah, I mean, I have deep skepticism for these people that say everything happens for a reason, or these people that say, nothing happens in God's world by mistake. I mean, obviously, when you've got everything from world wars to acts of terrorism to people who are born with cancer and people who die in really horrible fashions every day, I mean, I think that kind of cancels the notion that everything happens for a reason. I'm not a big believer in fate. But that doesn't prove anything about drinking or a drinking problem. Again, that doesn't have nothing to do with a drinking problem. Okay, because you saw some bad things in the world and you looked at it with skepticism, that somehow makes you a bad drunk, or that somehow makes you a bad alcoholic. I mean, we looked askance at many individuals who claim to be godly. Well, hypocrisy has a tendency to piss people off. At least it does me, How could a supreme being have anything to do with it at all? Okay. And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Well, if it was a supreme being, we probably couldn't comprehend it. Finite mind, infinity, and all that other kind of stuff. Yet in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Okay. So because you looked up at the stars at night, you got kind of a dreamy feeling and you wondered what was going on out there, it somehow proved what exactly? I mean, it proves that you felt awe and wonder. It doesn't prove that there's, that there's any, I don't get what he's getting at with that. Yet we of agnosticism is just a position of not knowing, okay? Gnostic, in the old word, meant knowledge. A was without, okay? Without knowledge is all agnostic means. So, rephrase that. Yet we of without knowledge temperament. That's just agnostic temperament. That's just simply, agnosticism is just simply claiming you don't know. We had these thoughts and experience. Let's make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Okay, it's impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, and then you make the statement, which is God. In other words, you're saying it's impossible for us to comprehend this, but you can comprehend it. It used to kind of crack me up in these AA meetings when these old timers would say something like, well, I don't know what God is. But that's not necessarily true now, is it? Because you sit in meetings and you say, God wants you to get sober. You sit in meetings and you say, God wants you to work the steps. You sit in meetings and you say, God wants you to be happy, joyous, and free. You sit in meetings and you say, God puts people in your life. So you're lying to me if you're saying that you can't comprehend what God is, and then you go ahead and you assign attributes to it, okay? The best way to describe that simplistically would be to say, all right, there's something here in this house with me right now, this house that I'm renting. I don't know what it is. I can't comprehend what it is. I have no idea how to explain what it is, but it's here with me. And but it wants me to make this video, and it wants me to wake up on time and go to work, and it wants me to it wants me to rearrange furniture. It wants me to clean the bathrooms, and it wants me to make sure the dishes are done. But I don't have any way of comprehending what it is or what it wants. Okay, you can't have both on that one. That's just a complete illogical thing to, I don't understand what it is, but I know what it wants. Okay, if there's something out there that you don't know what it is, that you can't comprehend what it is, that you claim is an all-encompassing mystery, you can't claim to know what it wants. You wouldn't know what the motives of it is. So there's more grandiose statements without saying anything. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Okay, I guess. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. Okay, well, if you are claiming that you don't need to consider anybody else's ideas here, I mean, that's what you just got through saying, then why would you claim no matter how inadequate? So you're saying that there's no bad way to do this so long as you try to do it, even if it's inadequate. But yet you're calling this power that you can't identify, you're saying him. I mean, what if it's like the Force on Star Wars? I mean, why are you calling it him? Why are you giving me all these attributes about it, but claiming to not know anything about it? I mean, this is just, my head is almost hurting from this. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction. Provided we took other simple steps, we found that God does not make hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of the spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive, and forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It's open to all men, we believe. So first of all, you don't know what this creative power is, but all you got to do is acknowledge that it's there. You got to say, creative power, spirit of the universe, creative intelligence, I know you're there. And all of a sudden you're going to get great results, right? I mean, you're just going to put the bottle down and you're going to get all these great results, and it's going to actually contact you, and it's actually going to it's going to talk to you. It's going to tell you what you could do with your life. Even though it's really weird, what it's going to tell you is to do more AA stuff. It's going to tell you to do more step work and to go to more meetings and to talk to more sponsors. So all you got to do is say, there's a creative intelligence in the universe out there, and I want to make contact with it right now. And I'm going to get great results as soon as I lay aside my prejudice. A healthy degree of skepticism, I might add, is not prejudice. I don't know where he's getting this. He keeps throwing around this term prejudice. I mean, if I walked up to you on the street, okay, and I said there's a creative intelligence in the universe and all you got to do is acknowledge it to get great results, and you'll make contact with him when you do this, most people are going to tell me, to tell the story walking. They're going to tell me to fuck off. I mean, guy's a freaking Looney Tune. He's a nutcase. I mean, yet here he is typing something that's just that incoherent, and this is hailed as some great wisdom, and it's open to all men. But the program only works if you're a real alcoholic. It's not just all men. So in one chapter, it's only if you're as seriously as alcoholic as we are. But in the next chapter, it's open to everybody. Everybody can acknowledge this creative intelligence, and they're going to get great results. I mean, that's almost like a poor salesman's line or something like that. We commence to get great results. I mean, do used car salesmen even try a line like that? I mean, commence to get great results. I'm going to go a couple of more sentences before I stop with it. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms defer you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. Well, so, this is worse than like listening to some crazy guy in a subway that's been smoking meth for a week. Okay, I mean it's literally worse than that. So your conception is limited. But this creative intelligence is going to look down on you because you have a limited understanding of it. But you commence to turn your life completely over to it, and it's just going to reach out and it's going to do what for you exactly? He keeps talking in these terms of we did this and we did that and we did all these other things. I mean, you're not being very specific here. I mean, that you do know there was never no first magical 100 group of people that stayed sober all the days of their lives, right? You do know that that at the time he wrote this book, he barely had a handful of members, yet he was trying to claim it had helped all these people. You do know that the huge failure rate of AA as it is kind of disproves all this, but at the same time, you're not giving me anything concrete to work with here. All he's doing in these paragraphs is saying there's something out there, and if you lay aside prejudice, you get great results. I mean, you're sorry, it's hard to keep a straight face looking at this and to believe I ever took this seriously. I mean, to sum it all up, that's all he's saying here. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I believe, or am I now willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself? Power greater than myself. That very vague and ambiguous, again, whatsoever. Power greater than myself. I mean, okay, there's powers greater than myself. Look, they got me going schizophrenic here with this type of insane writing. Power greater than myself. Okay, storms are, I guess you could call it a power greater than myself. Automobiles, planes, I don't know, electricity. I mean, what are we talking about here? A power greater than myself. And it's supposed to be this mysterious power that you can't define, but you call it him and God. And it's supposed to give you all these results, but he's not even really defining what these results are going to be. He doesn't say we're going to quit drinking. He doesn't say that we're going to... He's really not saying anything. I mean, this is just a poor presentation of trying to sell you some kind of phony faith is all it really is. I mean, no wonder this chapter rubbed me the wrong way, because people would read this stuff and they could actually take up a full 45 minutes to an hour talking about it. And I mean, there's really nothing to even talk about or comment on here. It's just utter nonsense. I don't even know if I can actually finish this chapter. I mean, but to think that people have become so brainwashed and desperate that they'll accept any kind of solution to try to quit drinking, that they'll listen to shit like this being said by a bunch of unprofessional morons that have no training whatsoever, that have just read this book 1,000 times and gone to a million meetings where this topic has been repeated over and over and over again. I mean, it's really scary that this is still primarily pushed as the go-to place when someone has a drinking problem. Is AA. Is pushed in popular culture. It's wormed its way into our court systems. It's all in the treatment center industry. This kind of weird pseudo-religious bullshit. I guess I'm going to stop right there. I got all the way up to 27 minutes with it. But anyway, hopefully I'll be able to do another one here by next week. Until then.